Well, this morning we're going to be in the book of Luke. You know, this is kind of what's called the parable of the Great Supper. Or waiting for the choir to work their way in and the little ones to leave. You know, my wife had a yard sale the last couple of days, and you know, she had a plan for quite a while. You know, wanted a little bit extra money for our vacation. That's what she told me. But she kept telling me to go through my clothes and see what I need to get rid of. Well, I'm a man. There's nothing I need to get rid of. But she said, there's some things you just don't wear no more. So I went through my closet, and, you know, if you're from Parsonage, you know, in the master bedroom, it's a walk-in closet. You walk in, her stuff's on the left, there's two full bars there. She can put her stuff on. On my side, there's a full bar, and then a little short one, that's about it. When I go looking for my clothes on Sunday, I have to weed through her stuff to find my stuff on my side. One thing I noticed is when I cleaned out my side a little bit, I sent a few clothes with her for the yard sale and everything. And then she made a comment, now I got room so I can find some clothes for the trip. Now I know what she wanted to bring. But men hate to get rid of things, don't they? Everywhere around, when you go to these thrift stores, 95% of it is for women and kids, you got the 5% for men. And something's in it for the men that are wore out, or they're from the 1960s. You go to one of these places, you buy, if you want a leisure suit from the 70s, they might have it. I remember when I got first met, I had a leisure suit. I think we all did it, but we're in the 70s, didn't we?
You had 2 suits.
I had 2 suits. No, I had 4 suits. 2 were leisure and 2 were Air Force. But we're going to be talking this morning about the Great Supper. Now, have you ever gone to somebody's home? You know, I've seen this fact somewhere, I can't remember exactly where I saw it at. I remember seeing about some people having a home that says Jesus is the head of his home. The silent listener to every conversation. The unseen guest at every meal. I wonder if we ever stopped to think about when we're at home and we're carrying on a conversation or we're sitting down to supper or anything, that what it would be like when Jesus was actually sitting there with us. We know really he is. He is sitting there with us. But you know, what we're going to be looking at today is actually on a Sabbath day, a Sunday, like we have now. And Jesus was a special guest at this supper. Now, why was he invited? Maybe he's a guest preacher at the synagogue that Sunday. I don't know. But he was invited, and the person invited was one of the prominent Pharisees that invited him to the supper. Now, Jesus attended the meal, but instead of polite conversation, which is probably what everybody was hoping would happen, but when they were there, by the time Jesus was done, probably wish they brought an extra bottle of thumbs with them. Jesus, through his actions, the story he tells, and application he makes, exposes the character flaws of those that were in attendance at that supper that day. Now, the guests at this supper, like I said, they're Pharisees, they're scribes, otherwise known as lawyers. Today, we classify these as good church-going people. And they undoubtedly thought of themselves as spiritual and moral people. But if you would, look with me at Luke 14, I'm going to read verses 1 through 24. It said, now it happened as he went into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath, that they watched him closely. And behold, there was a certain man before him who had dropsy. And Jesus answering spoke to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? But they kept silent. And he took him and healed him and let him go. Then he answered them, saying, which of you, having a donkey or an ox that has fallen into a pit, will not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day? And they could not answer him regarding these things. So he told a parable to those who were invited. When he noted how they chose the best places, saying to them, when you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in the best place, lest one more honorable than you be invited by him, and he who invited you and him come to you and say to you, give place to this man, and then you began with shame to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place, so that when he who invited you comes, he may say to you, friend, go up higher. Then you will have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Then he also said to him who invited him, when you give a dinner or a supper, do not ask your friends, your brothers, your relatives, nor your rich neighbors, that they also invite you back and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you. For you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just. Now when one of those who sat at the table with him heard these things, he said to him, blessed is he who shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. And he said to him, a certain man gave a great supper and invited many, and sent his servants at supper time to say to those who were invited, come, for all things are now ready. But they all, with one accord, began to make excuses. The first said, I have bought a piece of land and I must go see it. I ask you to have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen and I am going to test them. I ask you to have me excused. Still another said, I have married a wife and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and reported these things to his master, and the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in here the poor, and the maimed, and the lame, and the blind. And the servant said, Master, it is done as you command, and still there is room. So the master said to the servant, go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say to you that none of those men who were invited shall taste my supper. Now again, one of the chief Pharisees is who invited Jesus to this supper. Now, they actually had a plan going on. They thought they were going to have fun that night. In fact, when you look at verse 1, it says, now it happened as he went to the house of one of the Pharisees, but they said that they watched him closely. So they watched him. They were laying a trap for Jesus, is what they were doing. They were going to try to trap him. You know, when you read the 4 Gospels, you see over and over and over again where the Pharisees were trying to trap Jesus with their questions. Well, this time, they just happened to have a man there that had dropsy. And they deliberately put this man close to Jesus to see what he would do. So, what Jesus did is he healed him. He healed him. So, essentially, according to them, he broke the law of the Sabbath. You know, they knew he would do it. Because before it happened right here, he'd done it at least 7 times before, healed people on the Sabbath. But what we're going to see here is how Jesus turns the tables on them and brought the subject up himself. You know, when I read this verse 2 here, and it talks about the guy having dropsy. I remember my grandmother, when she'd be cleaning the house, I'd go over visiting her stuff. And she'd walk through the living room and she'd drop onto her blood seat. And she told me she had 2 diseases. I said, what's that? She says, well, every time I walk by this chair, I dropsy into it, and now I don't have a heart to get up. So she had dropsy and heart disease, according to her. If I guarantee you the championship wrestling was on, you might as well leave. Nothing like in the world see this 4'11" woman jumping up and down in the middle of the living room. That's my grandmother. Yelling at the TV screen while she watched wrestling. She was more entertaining than the wrestling matches were. But Jesus healed this guy. And here in the very beginning of verse 4 it says, but they kept silent. Jesus shut them up. Jesus shut these people up and he stood up. He healed this man. And as we continue to look at these verses, when we look at verse 5, he's talking about the law. Well, yeah, there's an Old Testament law that says that you're not to work on the Sabbath. Then you have the spirit of the law and you have the letter of the law. And if you look at our laws nowadays in this country, Some of you really got to think, what were they thinking when they put that law into effect? And then you really look at it and you think, well, why are people being arrested for this? Because they go by the letter of the law, not by the spirit of the law. Well, the spirit of the law, when they talk about not working on the Sabbath in the Old Testament, that meant you not to go out and do your job and like that. But it did not say you cannot help people, because that's completely different. So what the Pharisees do is what they really enjoy doing is they would take the law and then add to it. So Jesus looks at them. If you had a donkey or an ox fall into the pit, would you not rescue him? Would you not get him out of that pit even if it was on the Sabbath? Well, they were willing to do that. What's wrong with Jesus healing somebody on the Sabbath? Verse 6 tells us how it got so quiet around the table. But, I'm sure it got very quiet. Just imagine the tension in the air. You could probably cut the tension with a knife. It was so thick. No, the word that comes to me right now is awkward. Because what Jesus had just done. When we look at verses 7 through 11, when Jesus tells a parable about the lowly place. See, in New Testament times, well, even in Old Testament times, when you're invited over to somebody's house for a dinner or for a wedding or anything like that, the higher you were on the social ladder, then the closer you got to sit to the head of the table and be more involved in the conversation of what was going on. And Jesus was commenting here on common sin in those days where when the dinner bell rang, everybody went running. So I call them hogs of slop. They all run. They wanted the best places. They want to sit near the head of the table because the closer to the head of the table they were, the more important they were. So that's more important than they felt. So they would go running in. They'd be diving for the best chairs, and they'd hang on to those things, and they would let them go. It kind of reminds me of a Baptist church when the bell rings in Sunday school class. And those doors fly open to the Sunday school classes, and everybody's running in the sanctuary so they get one of the closest seats. Well, maybe not. But they do run here so you can fill up the back first. I had a friend tell me one time that he actually roped off the back half of the pews in his church one time, just like he might do for a wedding or a funeral. And I didn't know how that worked. He said, freaking out, he even got in there, the ropes were gone. And people were still sitting in the back. But watch Jesus teach them here. He's teaching them about self-promotion. Self-promotion does not lead to fulfillment. Self-promotion is temporary. I guarantee you it's incomplete. And we look down here through these verses, and we look at chapter 11. With God, the way is up. Can you imagine the tension out at the table? Jesus still the man in the face, though that disapproved of what he did. Then looked at the guests straight in the eye, and he corrected their manners. Because he tells them that they should not be doing that. Now we look at verses 12 through 14 here. We see again that the atmosphere is just so tense. He says to them in 12, then he said to him who invited him, when you give a dinner or supper, do not ask your friends. He said, don't ask the important people. Go out in the community and invite those that are poor, the maimed, the blind. You're to invite them. Because now you're doing for somebody that they can't repay you. How many times do we do something for somebody and say, well, now they owe me? Or how many times people come to you and say, hey, if you do this for me, I owe you one. You ever notice how that one never comes back? No, I was thinking the other day, if our 4 boys repaid us all the money we've loaned them since they left home, we'd be rich. But the Bible also says, just so I don't get in trouble here, that when you loan money to somebody, don't expect it back, because your reward will be in heaven. I hope my boys aren't listening this summer. but it doesn't matter. What does it do you that when you do something, you don't only do it for those that can pay you back. Where's the blessing in that? The blessing comes when you help those that cannot pay you back. I know this past few days, Pam spent quite a bit of time at the hospital with Tracy. I got it right. With that, if I'd known she had a 15-pound boy, I'd have been up there too just to see it. But, but Pam's up there with her and spent quite a bit of time up there talking to her, and I actually got to hold the baby, and we kept all 10 of their boys over our house one night. It seemed like 10. But they were good kids. But Tracy told Pam, says, if I ever paid back, just let me know. That's not why we do it. That's not why she did that, was to be paid back. When we do things for people that can't pay us back, we get a blessing for it. I'd rather be owed by God than somebody here on this planet. Because what I'm going to get back from God will be a whole lot greater than what I get from somebody else. Then we get down to verse 15. Is this now? When one of those who sat at the table with him heard these things, he said to him, blessed is he who shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. He's quoting scripture. It's an old saying that they had back then. Well, it's kind of one of those pious statements that a lot of people used back then. It's really similar to what we do nowadays, where we tell somebody, well, God bless you. And we never ask God to bless them. But, Southern people, and I know this is true of Oklahoma too, when an old lady says something about somebody, she says, oh, just bless their heart. That's sure everybody saying, aren't they stupid? They did something wrong, they did the wrong thing, and oh, just bless them. Oh, we'll just bless their heart. Just kind of a plot way of saying, that guy's not too bright sometimes. I remember hearing my grandma say things like that sometimes. Honey, you're from Montana, y'all didn't say that. But he's saying an old saying, and it doesn't really mean anything. But you know what? Jesus did not let this man get away with it. He did not let him get away with the same word. Just as Jesus had answered an invitation to dinner that he knew was not given out of a pure motive, he also knew that the others present had also come for the wrong reason as well. So Jesus turned to the man and said what he'd been preparing to say all evening. And that's where we actually get into the parable of the Great Supper. We look at verses 16 and 17. It said, and a certain man gave a great supper and invited many, and sent his servants at supper time to say to those who were invited, come, for all things are ready. In Jesus' day, invitations were sent out in advance. No, we do pretty much the same thing nowadays, don't we? We send out a card, RSVP, let us know if you're coming. And the custom back then was that the host would tell you the day, but not the exact hour. The host needed to know how many people were coming, so he would know how much meat to butcher and how much food to prepare for the banquet. And shortly before the feast would be ready, the host would send out his servants to tell the guests it's time to come because the food is ready. Now, this wasn't the invitation, this was a reminder. Now, we send out RSVPs, but we might have to get on the phone call somebody to remind them. But this here, back that time, they sent out a servant to go remind these people. Now, remember, each one of these guests that he sent out the servants to remind, they've already agreed to come to this dinner. They're expected. We need to remember something very important right here. God has prepared a great supper for all who will realize that all things are ready now. This invitation has already been made. We just need to go out and remind people of it. Just like these servants reminded the people of this supper. God also has an invitation. Everybody in the world has been invited. We are now the servants that God sends out to remind people of what God has prepared for them, if they will only accept it. Verse 18 starts with their excuses. And they had some good ones here. How about the man who says, I bought some property and I need to look at it. Well, first of all, they're having supper, so this is at night. And who buys land without looking at it? So that's his excuse. I bought this land, now I got to go out and look at it because I haven't seen it yet. So that's the kind of person I want to meet so I can sell them some oceanfront property in Arizona. He didn't, so it was an excuse. The next guy said, I have about 5 yoke of oxen and I'm going to test them. Well, once again, it's at night. Only thing I can think of when I'm fishing out in my mind, it's nighttime and he's going to hook up these yoke of oxen, so he has to test them out. These things didn't have headlights like we got now on tractors. How's he going to test them out at night? Once again, we see an excuse. An excuse not to come. So the first man let his possessions be an excuse. Then the next, let business get in the way. Now it's true, we got to make a living. But it's God Himself who will bless you. It's God Himself who allows you to make a living in the first place. You know, my time that I visit people that have been really sick and maybe even close to dying, I've never heard someone once say, I wish I'd worked more, or I wish I'd made more money, or I wish I had more. I've never heard that said. I have heard say, I wish I'd been closer to God. I wish I went to church more. I wish I read my Bible more. Well, now let's take a look at verse 20. So notice this, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So now he uses his family as an excuse. In fact, that's probably the most lame excuse of all of them. These people just need to tell the truth. He knows that they're newlyweds. So it's quite obvious, you know, wouldn't the guy want to go to this thing so he can have a good meal? Him and his wife would both go, have a nice meal, and it's nice word about cooking. I told them newlyweds. But now, this guy also made an excuse. You know, I heard it said that excuses are just dressed up lies. We say we have a good excuse, but really there's no such thing as an excuse. A good excuse is just a good lie. And that's what these men were doing. And that's what we do to God sometimes. Well, say, I've got a good excuse for missing church. But that's really a good excuse. Well, there's a teenage boy that was trying to sneak his date back into her home very late at night one time. He stood at the door, and as she headed up the stairs, but just as she got to the top of the stairs, there was her angry father. He told her to go to her room. Then the father walked down to the young man. And the father says, did I hear the clock strike 4 just a few minutes ago? The boy replied cleverly, yes, sir. It's going to strike 11. So I grabbed the gong and held it so it would not disturb you. The dad looked at him and laughed and says, son, that's good. Why didn't I think of something like that in my day? We start when we're young. We start our excuses when we're young. We learn it from our parents. We learn it from our grandparents. It's kind of like the boy who said, the dog ate my homework. Well, the teacher didn't believe me. She said, no, really, teacher. I had to force him to, but he ate it. That's got a little bit of gravy on there. Unfortunately, many times as adults, we continue what we started as a child. And we think we're getting better at giving excuses, but the person who is good at excuses is usually not much good at anything else. If you've ever worked in, like I have in manufacturing, I've always heard excuses about why jobs didn't get done in time. All the time. People will argue with me about the time frame I've set up. But I had this little plaque in my office. is my set of rules. Just like God has rules. You know, He has the 10 Commandments. I have my rules. There's always 2 of them that whatever easy to go by. The first one said the boss is always right. And number 2 was, if the boss is wrong, refer to rule number 1. But God doesn't accept our excuses. He only accepts the truth. And we look at the final verses here, 21 through 24. It says, the servant came and reported that though these things to his master, then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servants, go out quickly to the streets, to the lanes of the city, and bring in here the poor, the lame, the maimed, the blind. And then he sent them back out again to the highways and the hedges to bring people in so that there would be plenty of people there for his feast. God goes to those who are willing. When Jesus came to earth, He came first for the Jews. Well, the Jews told Him no. And so then God went to the Gentiles. And He said to the Gentiles, I am in a great position. I go to the sick, not to those who think that they're whole. God doesn't care about replacing life. He doesn't care if you're white collar or blue collar. He doesn't care if you're educated or not. He doesn't care if you're down and out or if you're on the move going up. The invitation that God sends out is for everybody, but often only heeded by those who are looking for the real truth. We look at the world in the situation it's in right now. Everybody's looking for something. And there's something out there for them. Well, there's really 2 things out there for them. The first is actually the best one, that's God. And what Christ did for us on the cross 2,000 years ago. The second thing is the worldly things. The things that are going to lead to destruction. The ones that lead to bad habits. And we need to remember something. You know, we have an invitation here every Sunday morning. But God's invitation goes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He never stops giving His invitation. But if you reject His invitation, because God is perfect, He rejects you. So we have a choice. D.L. Moody, on his last sermon, he used the same text that we're using here in Luke 14. His title was simply Excuses. He preached in New York, in Kansas City, and in 1899 he was at the Civic Auditorium. Before going, he told his students that in Chicago, never, never have I wanted more to see souls saved than in this service to come. In that service, he felt his heart start to throb. He had to hold on to an organ while he was preaching to keep from falling over. But he made no excuses. He continued to preach. And 50 people were saved that night. A short time later, D.L. Moody died. But he just had to give the last invitation first. He said, all things are ready. Come to the feast. We are all invited to the feast. When we read in Revelations how Jesus is going to have a feast for this church. This is a feast like we have no idea. Trust me, this is a feast that's going to make what we're going over to here in a few minutes, the Methodist Church, go like nothing. Because when God gives the feast, He gives the very best. When God gives the feast, you at that table aren't wanting anything else. Because God fills us. Please stand with me this morning to have our invitation.